Hello and welcome to the Goal Assist podcast. My name is Joshua Price. Our mission here is to bring you closer to executives across the football industry. We do that by hosting this podcast, but also we have a community where we host live Q&As with all the guests of this podcast. So if you'd like to network with myself and the guests we have on, then please use the link below, join the community. Our guest today is someone I'm really excited to introduce you to, someone who's got years of experience in the football industry and in a niche even I'm not as clued up on. Vince Williams, an executive board member at the RAF. Vince, absolute pleasure to have you on.
Josh, yeah, good to be on and I really appreciate the invite, so thank you very much.
No problem at all. So you've spent the last 18 years at the RAF Football Association. What first drew you to sort of this side of the game and what's kept you passionate after all these years?
Well, I grew up in Farnborough in Hampshire and I got involved with Farnborough Town Football Club, first as a supporter being on the terraces. And then as I sort of got into my teens, I sort of got on the football committee and I worked my way up and eventually I became the club secretary. So I was secretary between 1994 and 2006. Obviously, some of that time was spent in the football conference and I was full-time as well for the last 6 years. But we played Arsenal in the 2003-04 season and after that, the last couple of years were quite difficult. And I saw this job advertised with the RFFA, which at the time was Football Liaison Officer. And I really liked the sounding of that. And I thought the stability of working for a county FA had a lot of advantages. So I thought it was time for, something different. And I applied and fortunately I was successful. And I've been here ever since. Not quite sure where all them 18 years have gone, but it's certainly flown by. Excuse the pun, but it's been great fun.
Yeah, brilliant. I was really tempted to fill the introduction with a load of Top Gun references because it's just such a good film, but I restrained myself from doing so. You've obviously had, over that time, you've had several roles across the RAFFA. You've done loads. So what does your day-to-day sort of look like now?
Well, one of the great things about the job, Josh, is the fact that the job is so varied. Having previously, currently I'm the business manager, but obviously sort of coupled in with being secretary. And I'm sure a lot of people in the football industry will know, especially in the secretarial roles, that at times it seems to have no boundaries. So what I like is my job's really varied. So obviously I support our board of trustees, I support our executive committee, but my daily job will see me do anything from supporting, our representative teams, our leagues, our unit teams, and, also, aside from that, I do some of our website work. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the FA's regional discipline panel and the national serious case panel. So I do quite a bit of discipline work. Some of them hearings are during the day, some are in the evenings as well. So the job is really varied. And then obviously you've got the never ending email traffic as well. So, it's ever changing. You're never quite sure what you're going to come into.
No, but I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the fact that there's no sort of guardrails on what falls into your scope. I know a lot of people work as club secretaries across football clubs and they deal with almost everything. They're probably one of the most informed people and underappreciated from the external word. Everyone talks about, the people running the football operations, they talk about the CEO maybe, but the club secretaries are such vital parts of football organisations. And they literally span across all areas of operations. You also worked extensively in safeguarding and safety assurances. What are some of the key responsibilities you have as part of the board of trustees when it comes to sort of safety and standards?
Yeah, well, obviously, one of the key things from an RFFA point of view is that we report to several organisations and regulatory organisations. So we have to comply with certain requirements. And obviously part of that is safeguarding as well. But when I look at them organisations, so we've got obviously the FA, which is our national governing body, which is absolutely vital. And we've got a great relationship with them. But then within the RAF, we've got the Royal Air Force Directorate Sport, who sort of produce all the different policies, safety and governance, etc. Then we've got the RAF Central Fund, which provide a lot of our funding. And then obviously wider than that, we've got Companies House and the Charities Commission, obviously noting that we are a trust.
So, one of the things is obviously it's really important when it comes to safeguarding is sort of like doing things properly. And I think that obviously that sort of sentiment of doing things properly applies sort of wider across all areas really, but it's something that's really key especially when it comes to sort of safeguarding and assurances. That phrase, doing things properly, what does that mean and why is it so important?
I think it's so important that we do things correctly in the right way, because it engenders trust to other organisations that our standards are high and that we, fulfil our commitments. With safeguarding, we don't have any youth football, but when we look at things like adults at risk, PTSD in the military, things like that, so it is still very relevant. And again, when I look at like the assurance and safety side within the RAF, we have within the association safety management plan, which I'm sure is so much more comprehensive than what most county FAs would have on the sort of civilian side, because it's a requirement of the RAF. And, the RAF have, well over 50 sport associations. They try and encompass all the safety requirements. So it's not always a sort of, one size fits all, but it does ensure that, the game that we love and play is safe. So, whether it's the safety side or the safeguarding side, we take them very, we're very focused on them.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And one of the things that even just hearing you speak on there is there's so many lessons that can be learnt and applied across different sports, but also just through different areas of football. And almost feels like an obvious point that like the governance and safety and structure, the Forces FA is going to already have that integral of their operations because of obviously the nature of the rest of the organisation. So no, I think that's really good, and I think it's a really good learning point that obviously can be applied throughout other football clubs and other county associations. What does football look like in the RAF? I know everybody knows what it looks like on a weekend. We've got the Premier League kick, as we record this today, we've got the Premier League kicking off on Friday, Liverpool versus Bournemouth. I've actually had the privilege of playing against the RAF once in a pre-season friendly. I think it might have just been the Stafford Regiment, because I was playing for Stafford Rangers at the time. We have a big RAF base here in Stafford. So we had a pre-season friendly against the RAF. So I believe it was just the Stafford Regiment, not the overall team. But other than that, I don't have that much of an understanding of how sort of football works within the sort of RAF environment. So can you just briefly explain and sort of paint a picture of what the sort of football ecosystem looks like?
Of course, yeah. So we've got the RFFA, we've got the Army FA and the Royal Navy. So the three services are their own independent football associations. Sitting above that, we do have the UK Armed Forces Sports Board, and obviously UK Armed Forces football is within that. So we've got a men's and women's team at that very high level, which obviously is the best players from the three services. Then underneath that, within the RAF, we've got a number of representative teams, the men's, the women's, the under-23s, our veterans, and Icarus, which is the officers side. And then underneath that, we have, which we've been running for a couple of years now, we have a trade, or some people call it the Professions League. So different trades, it could be the RAF Fire Service, could be the catering service, air and space ops. So they've also got teams as well, and their own RAF Astra League, which is proving very popular. And then underneath that, we've got the unit football. So, we're based here at RF Bryce Norton. So RF Bryce Norton's got its station team. Some of the bigger units may have reserve team. Some obviously have got women's teams. And we've got 6 affiliated leagues, which are sort of regionalised. So the units affiliate and play in them leagues. And then we also run the RF Cup, which is a very popular competition. And the unit teams can enter that. And then obviously within the units, there might be some intersection leagues going on. So here at Bryce, because it's the biggest unit, it's sort of formalised and affiliated. And that will be different sections and different squadrons, and they will play. And again, one of the main differences from civilian football is that a lot of our footballers play during the week. So it's a real attraction for those looking that, love the game of football, want to join the RAF. You can actually play football on a Wednesday afternoon and you're getting paid for it. So, it's really, there's a lot of football that goes on. And then even like the lunchtime kickabouts on the five-a-side courts, there's a lot of ad hoc football as well. So, there's a lot of football being played.
I think that's one of the things that people don't realise about. There's an entire ecosystem of football that most people are almost completely unaware of. It's a football pyramid within itself, and it's really interesting to see. The sort of one of the major tournaments is obviously the RAF Challenge Cup, which we touched on there. It's been running for over 100 years. What does it feel like to watch it, like sort of two stations battle it out, the sort of rivalry and the feeling of those fixtures? Everybody can sort of like an Old Firm derby or Liverpool Everton. Obviously, I know it'll be a different sort of scale in terms of fans and attendance, but in terms of the rivalry on the pitch, I imagine with the sort of mentality that's instilled into people when working in the armed forces, I imagine the sort of the matches to be played at a real high intensity.
The RF Cup is a really important competition, and I think the players that take part in it, I think they appreciate and they're aware of the history of it. You know, it's a lovely trophy. It goes back, as you say, 100 years, and there's the opportunity to play different teams. So obviously those that are playing in leagues, the unit leagues, because we do a draw, there's the opportunity to play different teams that you wouldn't normally play. So when we do conduct the draws, one of the highlights is everybody wants to be drawn away to RAF Akrotiri. That means a few days away in Cyprus. So, that's quite a big draw. But I think it's just a little bit different from the run-of-the-mill sort of league games. And, to actually get a RF Cup winners medal is a big ambition for a lot of the players that we've got. So, it's a really good competition. The last few years, we've had a good partnership, and we've played the final Oxford City Football Club.
That was brilliant. Again, great venue as well. Oxford's really good, and I'm close with a few people at the club, also at the community trust. It's a really well sort of family oriented, community oriented football club, and I'm not surprised that they've sort of been hospitable and sort of host the finals and stuff there, because they are a really, really well run club. Sort of similar question again, but I imagine maybe I'm saying that football's football, so you go out and you want to win every single game. But I imagine when it comes to the RAF competing against the Navy or competing against the Army, how does that work? What does that look like? Because I imagine that's just like carnage, or it would be the way which I'm picturing it is absolute mayhem. But
I mean, it is another level altogether. If I look at the RF representative teams, so our men and women would play typically probably 10 or 12 fixtures during the course of the season, and they would primarily be sort of friendly fixtures. Occasionally we will enter into another county's senior cup for some competitive games, but really the whole season is based on 3 or 4 day meets, training, playing, and everything is geared in preparation for the inter-services. Now, the under-23s competition takes place in February every year, and the men and women and the veterans, they play their games in March. And again, we get really good attendances for them, and we play them games at a football league or semi-professional grounds. So for over 10 years now, we've played our home men's game at Shrewsbury Town. Again, they host us really, really, well, very kindly. We've got a great relationship with them. And, it gives a great experience for the players to actually play in that environment. And the Army and the Royal Navy, they will use, Fratton Park or Aldershot Town Football Club. And again, it's just a better facility for the players to play in. And we ramp up the occasion. So quite often we will have a helicopter from RAF Shawbury that will fly in and drop the match ball in. There's usually bands, and we have cadets there, etc. So the whole experience on the match day for the players, spectators, officials, it is our sort of showpiece really each season. So we want to try and get it right. So the inter-services mean a lot, and very, very feisty matches. You can imagine there's a few tackles flying in. And usually the busiest man on the night is probably the referee.
It almost plays out then how I picture it in my brain, with like the marching bands, helicopters dropping in the match ball, and then like I say, I can imagine again great host football clubs again. This is where the football pyramid and everyone sort of having that collaborative approach to sort of bring these events to life. That is definitely something I'm adding to the list of sports events I need to attend, because it sounds absolutely incredible.
Make sure we get an invite.
Thank you very much. In terms of the touching on sort of like collaborative and coming together, obviously yourself, the Army, and the regular football FA all have to sort of work together collaboratively to sort of work towards your objectives? What does that sort of look like?
Yeah, well, I think, across all spectrums of life, really, and football as well, I think relationships are absolutely key to everything that you get involved in and how you deliver things. So, our relationship across the board with the FA and, the other two services and the other counties, I believe is in a really healthy place. So the RFFA is one of 50 county FAs that are sort of, affiliated and funded, supported by the Football Association at Wembley. So we work closely, I suppose, with our other two services. We've got individuals that sit on the UK Armed Forces Football Executive Committee as well. So we're very much involved in how that runs. UK Armed Forces Football has expanded over the last 2 or 3 years, and they've now got their own sort of key fixtures. So they will play the Kentish Cup, which is the oldest European football tournament as recognised by UEFA in Europe. Each year they will play the French and the Dutch. And again, the Kentish Cup, beautiful trophy. And, underneath that, we then sort of work with the FA in terms of having, regular meetings with them. They set a lot of our KPIs in terms of participation and growing the game, making sure that referees develop, and that we've got coaches as well to sort of develop the players. So we have really good relationships with the FA, UK Armed Forces Football, and then in other partnerships with the county FAs. We've got staff that sit on the FA's collaboration consultation groups. So I think I think the football picture from the FA and its counties over the last 2 or 3 years was really improved. I think there's a lot more togetherness. And then everybody's working together to sort of shape the future as well.
It's evident to see just from what you've been saying today, but also from how the county FA structure, as I know it works, they're all very collaborative, and the fact that you're all sort of within that structure, but also sort of apply those lessons and that collaborative approach to the way in which you guys operate is brilliant to hear. One of the things that obviously, I'm not sure if it's measured specifically in a KPI, but one of the things that from an external noticing what's going on is that there's been a lot of effort around inclusivity, around women's football, around veterans football, and sort of that's evolved over the years. What impact has that had on the wider community, and how have you gone about sort of like bringing this change throughout the Forces FA?
Inclusion and diversity is really important to the RF Football Association and also the wider RAF. So we've been fortunate on the football side. We've had a really, really impactful inclusivity advisory group, which has been headed up by a wing commander. And we've got a number of people that sit on that committee, one of our subcommittees, and we meet very regularly. And we've had the equality standard for sport, both the foundation and prelim levels were both achieved a few years ago. So again, we're focused and we want to try and give as many opportunities and make, football across the RAF as inclusive as possible. So I think it's one of our most productive areas and where we've been sort of very forward leaning.
The fact that you're developing these teams, developing these opportunities, improving the profile of these competitions, of, each segment of the different teams, I think it shows the amount of effort that's being put in to try and raise the profile of the competitions for inclusivity, but also therefore that then spreads into the wider sort of ecosystem. Talking about sort of the community aspect and everybody being inclusive, obviously people that join the forces, there's a lot of times where people may have to relocate. How does football work as sort of a glue to help make sure that when people come to a new place, they have that feeling of a place to belong?
I think from a football point of view, the way the military posts people, it does provide us as an association with quite a few challenges. So each unit will have an officer in charge of football, which in effect would be the equivalent of, say, a club chairman. And then obviously you've got a secretary, manager, coaches, treasurer, people like that. And then their players. But, typically with these individuals being posted every 2 or 3 years, there's a constant change. And given our sort of, geographics, we cover the whole of the UK, overseas, and the demographics as well. It's a challenge just to keep, on top of all the constant changes so that we can communicate effectively with everybody. But I think, looking at football and the opportunities it provides. I mean, it provides people to play for different teams, be coached by different people, and just see a different environment. If you get really proactive individuals involved at units and higher up our sort of football pyramid, it can attract people. And I think going back to the previous question as well, when we look at the success of the England Lionesses, it's really inspired, the women in the RAF, have to be reasonably, fit as, annual fitness test. And I think it's given them the sort of confidence to get involved with football. And we've now got not only more players, but we're now getting, women that are taking up the whistle, refereeing, and we want to try and get more female coaches as well. So, and I think when we look at, say, the veterans as well, we've really grown that family in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think, for people that have actually left the service, being involved with our RAF veterans football team is really, really helpful in terms of the social gatherings that they can go to for fixtures, and really helps with the mental well-being. So I think when you look at everything, it just encompasses all the benefits. Football really is a vehicle for good.
Absolutely. Football, when used in the right way, can absolutely be a massive vehicle for good, social good for local communities, and like you say, mental health. Football, is it Shankly that said, football isn't life or death, it's far more serious than that.
Yeah.
It really can be. And I think, everything that you've done to sort of grow the women's game, and like you say, the success of the Lionesses is only going to continue to push more women to hopefully compete in the sport. But like you say, not only that, become referees, become managers, become coaches, and really get involved in the game, because there's a long history of what happened with the women's football, and to see it sort of come back now and have the sort of form it deserves is really good. You must be so proud of the work that yourself have been able to contribute to, but obviously what the RAFFA has managed to achieve. What's the proudest moment you've had over your time there, whether it be sort of in a competition or development initiative, or like just something behind the scenes? What's been your proudest moment?
I suppose, it's very interesting being a civilian, someone who's never served, but actually working in this environment. And I've always had the sort of thought, I never want to let anyone down. These individuals, they serve our country, and in a small way, I just feel like I want to serve them to try and support them playing football or getting involved. I suppose personally, the proudest times I've had, quite recently, we achieved the FA's Code of Governance, which all the counties have been working to. And that's been a sort of 3 or 4 year period of work with various work strands, from having new articles of association to restructuring our board of trustees, our executive committee, new policies, independent directors being appointed, and they've brought so much to the RF football table. It's been terrific to see. So I think achieving that from a sort of work point of view, governance is so important these days. I heard the phrase all roads lead to governance, and I think it's fairly true in, whatever aspects of what you're looking at in football, governance it plays a key role. On the football side, I was fortunate enough to serve as the secretary of the UK Armed Forces football for 6 years. I witnessed the team win the Kentish Cup, both in France and in the Netherlands. And the togetherness and the camaraderie, to me, it really got to me, because you felt like you was with these military people on the battlefield almost, because, again, really feisty games against the French and the Dutch, but to actually win it, on foreign soil. So from a football side, that was really a pleasing moments as well.
Yeah, I bet there's nothing greater than that. It could be an absolutely massive win. The more I'm hearing you speak, the more I'm like, I need to get way more involved in the armed forces version of football, because it just sounds unbelievable. Obviously, 2 decades almost is a very long time to be with any organisation, let alone obviously a football organisation. It means that you've had the brilliant opportunity to really put your mark on and make a difference within the organisation. After all that time, what legacy or long-term impact are you hoping to leave behind?
Josh, just for answering that, going back to the point you were previously making, and we were talking about the England Lionesses a short time ago, the former RAF men's kit manager, who was a corporal, he is now the Lionesses kit manager. So, he's just been over to the Euros. He's got a dream job and he loves it. But, his grounding and his learning was being the kit man for the RF team. And I never lose sight of the fact that with all our large, volunteer workforce, many of them not only give up their time and get involved in football in the RAF, but they then go back to their home communities at weekends and they either play, they referee, they coach. So, the impacts of what RAF football delivers is not just in the RAF, it is in the wider, civilian communities as well. And I think the training that individuals can get and what's instilled in them can be a really good foundation for getting jobs in football, in civilian street. I totally agree with you. There's always jobs being advertised, whether it's at other county FAs or clubs, etc. So I think, the skills that people can pick up and learn in the RAF or the services puts them in good stead. In terms of what I'd hope my legacy would be, it's interesting because our RFFA offices were set up here at RF Brize Norton back in 2006. And it came about sort of by chance. There was an RF officer who attended an FA meeting, was advised that there was some funding available. And I believe we was actually the last county FA out of the 50 to actually set up headquarters with staff. We're probably the smallest. There's only 3 employees. And one of my colleagues, Sheila Haining, she's been here 18 years as well with me. We've had a couple of football development managers in that time. The one who's currently we're working with, Alex Pratt, he joined us from Bucks and Bucks FA. He's very forward thinking and he's really increasing participations. I suppose my thought on potential legacy would just be someone who helped shape the offices when they first opened and the involvement of the structure of RAF football now and the way it is governed. And also that everything is not military focused. I think it's healthy, and I think the board of trustees, the chairman, the CEO would acknowledge that having sort of civilian people involved with some previous football experience helps the way that we deliver football.
It's a really good message for anybody who's listening and wants to get involved and would like to volunteer. You don't necessarily need to come from a military background. You can just be someone that loves the game, wants to volunteer, wants to learn new skills, is willing to give up their time to obviously develop all these skills. And, the fact that you've achieved the County FA Code of Governance as well shows the journey that you've been on from opening up the offices to getting to a point where your governance structure is to the level in which it becomes compliant with the high standard of regulations that are currently out there. So, the legacy that you left behind, even from the work you've done already, is clear for everybody to see. Looking into the future, what are the RAF FAs? What are the next few years looking like in terms of sort of participation, performance, partnerships? Like, what are the ambitions? Where would the organisation like to get to?
Well, again, I think the landscape for sort of county football associations is going to continue to change. We have to move with the times. The new platforms, the digital sort of landscape is there for everybody to see. And that's improving the way that, the game is administered. So that's really helpful. So I see the next few years, our focus will be partnerships is going to be key. One of the issues with the RF Football Association is facilities. Automatically, you would think, military facilities are going to be tip top. Unfortunately, they're not. There is a struggle with our grass pitches and wider facilities, especially accommodation. So that is something that we need to look at. And I think part of the solution will be partnerships. We're starting to do some work on our own measure of performance. So I think how we measure how we're delivering the game, how we're governing it, how we're making the offer available to people in the RAF is really important. And how we've measured that before is something that we've not particularly been good at. I think with the restructure, we've got a director of strategy now, a head of strategy on our executive committee. So I think we're going to have different ways and means of monitoring how we perform. And obviously, alongside all that, there's always going to be the focus to improve participation. So we want to certainly continue to get more women involved in RF football, whether that's playing, administrating. Last year, we had the chair of the Lincolnshire Services Football League is a female squadron leader. So that's really good to see. So, we are getting more and more involvement across the board. And it is all about inclusion.
I think that message of inclusion and participation, making sure that everybody has that environment, and like you say, the importance of the governance structures that allows that environment to sort of grow and relish and You know, the fact that everybody involved, it gives a supportive community for people who are looking for it, whether if you want to come in as a volunteer, but also if you are a serving member and looking to participate in football. Again, it's another way to feel like you've got an environment in which you feel supported and, you know, challenged and all the rest of it, both obviously in the RAFFA, but also just in the wider RAF. We talked about wanting to improve participation, or that's one of the objectives. In terms of that, any advice or guidance on how people can get involved, what they should be doing, whether they want to become a player, a coach, or work on the administration side, how can people get involved?
So I would suggest, you know, certainly have a look at our website, royalairforcefa.com. That's got all our latest news on it. It's got lots of information. And you can make contact with us as well. So, as I say, the headquarters are based here at RF Bryce Norton. We're always here to sort of signpost and support people. And as I said earlier, every unit's got an officer in charge of football. So, if you're new into the services or you're thinking of joining, when you are at a unit, you know, if you don't know who that is, you can certainly go to your PED flight, the GIN, and they will know who the contacts are. And without any shadow of a doubt, there'd be sort of, you know, training sessions going on, and to get involved is not too difficult at all. So, you know, we try and make the offer of getting involved or playing football as open as we possibly can.
So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to learn more about the RAFFA and all the great work that you're doing and what you've achieved so far, but also the direction of sort of armed forces football. Sounds really exciting, and I can't wait to see how it continues to develop over the next few years. So yeah, thanks again for joining, and thank you everyone for listening. Oh, quickly, before everybody signs off, again, I'd like to remind you, if you'd like to network with myself and Vince, ask more questions, learn more about the RFFA, we're going to be doing a live call, I believe, Monday. I'll put the link in the description below. I'll put the dates and times and everything there as well. But use the link, come join us, because we'd love to hear your questions and we'd love to get to know anyone that's involved in the game of football, but also especially those who want to learn more about the RAFFA. So thanks for everybody for listening, and thanks again, Vince, for joining me today.
Thanks very much, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you.